For over 2 years now, we've lived in a world where the term international law is used less like a shield and more like a hashtag. Just last month, on March 12th, Israel finally filed its counter memorial at the International Court of Justice, nearly 3 years after South Africa first brought the case. We've seen dozens of countries, from Namibia to the United States, intervene in the proceedings. We've seen the ICC issue warrants for prime ministers and defense ministers. And yet, if you look at the map, the lines haven't moved in the direction of justice. In Gaza, the humanitarian crisis has mutated into a permanent state of displacement. In Ukraine, we are entering the fifth year of a war that international law was supposed to prevent. In Sudan, the world's largest humanitarian crisis continues to be a graveyard for UN resolutions. There is a specific, bitter exhaustion in the air right now. People are looking at these grand buildings in The Hague and asking, are we being pranked? Is global justice just a high budget theater production? Today, we're going to look at why international law feels like a mirage. We're going to look at the enforcement gap, the reality of the 2026 New World Order, and why the system was actually designed to be this broken. To understand why 2026 feels so lawless, we have to understand the sovereignty wall. In your daily life, you live in a vertical legal system. If you steal a car, the state, which is above you, sends police to put you in a cage. There is a clear hierarchy. But the international system is horizontal. There's no world government above countries. There are only 193 sovereign states. Sovereignty is the legal equivalent of a keep out sign. It means that technically no one can tell a country what to do inside its own borders or with its own military unless that country consents to it. International law is essentially a club where the members write the rules, but there's no manager to kick them out if they break them. Think about the recent interventions in the ICJ case. We see the US, Hungary, and Fiji intervening on one side, Namibia and Iceland on the other. This isn't just a legal trial, it's a diplomatic civil war. The law isn't a set of rules being enforced, it's a language being used by sovereign powers to justify what they were going to do anyway. If you want to see how enforcement actually works in 2026, look at the capture of Nicolas Maduro in January. US forces removed him from Caracas and brought him to New York to face charges. Now, regardless of how you feel about Maduro, look at the legal mechanics. This wasn't an ICC warrant being executed by international police force. It was one powerful nation acting unilaterally because it had the military hardware to do it. This is the enforcement gap in a nutshell. When the law is enforced, it's usually because a big country decided to do it, not because a court ordered it. We are seeing a massive divergence. On one hand, you have the ICC, International Criminal Court, which targets individuals. They've issued warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, and Putin. But these warrants only work if the person walks into a country that is willing to risk a diplomatic nightmare to arrest them. On the other hand, you have the ICJ, International Court of Justice, which targets states. They can rule that a state is committing plausible genocide, as they did in the early stages of the South Africa versus Israel case. But the ICJ doesn't have an army, they have a printing press. They issue a 100-page document and then they wait for the UN Security Council to do something. And we all know what happens at the Security Council. The UN Security Council is the only body on earth that can legally authorize the use of force to stop a war. It is the teeth of international law, but it's been fitted with a permanent muzzle. The five permanent members, the US, UK, France, China, and Russia, hold the veto. In 2025, we saw this play out in real time. Twice, the US vetoed resolutions for a ceasefire in Gaza that would have been binding. Twice, Russia vetoed resolutions regarding Ukraine's sovereignty. We are currently in a veto deadlock. The system is functioning exactly how it was designed in 1945. to ensure that no major power can ever be forced to do anything it doesn't want to do. By 2026, the world has realized that the Security Council isn't a police station, it's a hostage situation. Each major power holds a piece of the law hostage to protect its own interests. This is why, despite the Pact for the Future signed in late 2024, reform feels impossible. You're asking the people who hold the keys to the jail to lock themselves inside. It's not going to happen. So, is it all a lie? If the ICC can't arrest the powerful and the Security Council is a graveyard for resolutions, why are we still talking about it? Why did Israel spend years crafting that counter memorial they just filed? Because even if international law is a mirage, it's a mirage that everyone has to walk toward. International law in 2026 doesn't work through enforcement, it works through exhaustion. It's about legitimacy. When a court like the ICJ issues a ruling, it doesn't stop the bombs, but it changes the cost of doing business. It makes it harder for allies to provide weapons. It triggers domestic lawsuits in countries like the UK or the Netherlands. It forces corporations to rethink investments in illegal zones because their shareholders fear future liability. Think of the international law as a slow acting asset. It doesn't smash the wall, it slowly eats away at the foundation of the regime's reputation until the wall becomes too heavy to stand. It's unsatisfying, it's painfully slow, it's frankly insulting to the people dying in refugee camps right now while lawyers argue over the definition of a provisional measure. But in a world where the alternative is a total unbridled jungle law, these courts are the only places where the weak can even look at the strong in the eye. We are entering what the UN is calling a new world disorder. The era of one global policeman is over. The US is acting unilaterally in places like Venezuela, Russia is ignoring the ICC, China is building its own parallel legal institutions. The international law mirage is fading because the world is no longer pretending there is a single set of rules. We are moving towards regional law that applies if you're in the Western Bloc and a different set of rules if you're in the BRICS Plus bloc. This is the danger of 2026. If the mirage of universal justice disappears entirely, we aren't left with better law, we're left with the law of the jungle. The reason people are so cynical right now isn't that they hate the law, it's that they want it to be real. They want a world where a child in Gaza has the same legal protection as a child in Geneva. The fact that we are outraged about the toothless ICJ is actually a good sign. It means we still believe there should be a moral baseline for humanity. The moment we stop being angry at the mirage is the moment we've accepted the desert. International law is not a shield, not yet anyway. It is a record, it is a scoreboard, it is a way for us to name a crime so that even if a criminal isn't caught today, they can never truly be innocent again. The cases of 2024 and 2025 are still working their way through the system. We are in the long, dark tunnel of the oral phrase and the final judgments. It's boring and it is technical and it feels irrelevant to the suffering on the ground. But understanding the mechanics, the sovereignty wall, the veto bottleneck, and the soft power acid is how we move from being cynical observers to being informed citizens. After everything we've seen in the last 2 years, do you still believe in the idea of a world court, or is it time to admit the experiment failed? Thanks for watching.